Welcome everybody to Linux Academy. My name is Terry, and over this course we will be covering all things Linux, introduction to installation and setup. So let's talk about how Linux in general, and Ubuntu we'll be using as our sample distribution, but how Linux in general deals with files and directories. Much like Windows, files and directories are just that. Files exist inside of directories or folders, so that they can be organized into either common categories or common locations. So libraries are in one set of directories, whereas executables are in another one. Unlike Windows, there is no such thing as a drive letter. Everything in Linux, including devices, is treated as either a directory or a file. So if we have multiple hard drives, for example, we will see them mounted as a directory that's referred to by its path. So what we mean by that is, if we were going to change into a directory in Windows called downloads, we would type cd and then a slash and downloads, provided we were already on the right drive. Now, in Linux, you'll notice that although that command succeeded, in most Linux distributions, that command would fail as an error. And the reason it would fail is because it's using the / when Linux uses backslashes. Ubuntu is trying to make the point of entry for Windows users less or easier than most distributions. Most distributions would just error that out. So the commands cd for change directory, mkdir for make directory are similar. Delete is different. In Windows, that would delete a file. In Linux, it's rm for remove. Now, you don't have to use the command line. The command line is a powerful utility, but especially Ubuntu has spent a lot of time in making their file managers very easy to use, like Windows file managers are. So we can take things that are in our downloads directory simply by pointing and clicking, highlighting them, right-clicking on them, and menus come up. We can cut it, move it to another directory. We'll go into Documents, and we can paste it here. We can also add directories. So if we wanted to add the templates directory to our list of directories that we could get to, we can drag and drop it. We can also add it. Well, we're not connected to a network share. We can also cut it and restore it back to where it was. And we can navigate using the navigation bar here at the top. But all of those same things can be done using a set of command line shortcuts. So if I want to list all files that are in a directory, simple ls will show me that my directories are highlighted in blue and my files are in white. Unfortunately, that doesn't tell me things like who owns the file, who has access to the file, where I am right now. So if I type pwd, this will tell me the directory that I'm currently in, and this is my home directory, which means that I'm the only person on the system, no matter how many accounts there are, that has access to everything in this directory unless I tell it otherwise. So if I want to know what other items I can see on a file system, I pass command line parameters to the file system listing. And in this case, ls-al says, show me a detailed listing that tells me the file permissions and ownership for every file and directory in this directory. So for example, in the Documents directory, which is in Home tcox, this directory is owned by tcox, which is me. It's also owned by the group tcox, and it's a directory, which is what the D stands for here. The owner, the first three permission items, read, write, execute, which means I can do anything to the files and folders that are in Documents. The group permissions, read-x, means that anyone in the TCOX group can read or execute, and the same permissions in the final 3 listing means that anyone, these are the last 3 permissions are the permissions that anyone has in a directory. So there are 9 parameters for every file and directory that tell you the first 3 is the owner permissions, the next 3 are the group permissions, the final 3 are everyone's permissions. So for example, in the ICE authority file here, as the owner, I can read and write. I can't even execute it. However, because I can write, I can change that ownership. But if I'm not the owner, then no one can do anything else. No one in the TCOX group, and certainly no one else can do anything as well. Those can be changed with a variety of commands called change mod, or modify the group permissions or the owner by doing a change owner. And those are commands that are beyond the scope of this particular video, but you have a great amount of control over who owns files, who can use files, who can even see files. So for example, from our last video, we have a test user called TCOX test. And if I log in as TCOX test, and I'm still in the home TCOX directory because I didn't change directory to the TCOX test home directory, and I try to, let's try to edit the ICE authority file. I can't even see the contents of it because the permission is denied, because I'm not the owner and there are no group or everyone permissions. Now if there is a file that has read permissions but not write permissions, so for example DMRC, I'm not the owner, so I can't write to it, but I can read. So if I do a vi on .dmrc, you'll see that I can see the contents of the file, but if I try to write anything to it, it'll tell me can't open the file for writing. And if I do a CD, logged in as TCOX test, you'll see it takes me directly to my home directory, where in this case I have access to everything. At the top of every directory listing in Linux, you'll see 2 entries, a dot and a dot dot. You'll see that the dot is owned by the same person who owns the current directory, because the dot is a shortcut for the current directory, whereas dot dot is the shortcut for the underlying directory or the parent directory, and that's always going to be owned by root. But everyone will have the ability to move into a parent directory. So even though I don't necessarily have write access to everything in home, I can at least view the files and directories that are in home. This is a very basic overview of how to traverse the file system and what files and folders look like in Linux. My name is Terry for Linux Academy, brought to you by Pinehead TV.